Hey, dear members of the Soul Stories family. Today we bring you a romantic love story, so let's begin. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a heartfelt tale. A fateful collision that night, the Grand Regency Hotel glittered under crystal chandeliers, the air thick with polished laughter and hushed schemes. The elite's charity auction wasn't just for flaunting wealth, it was a battleground for hidden power plays. Claire Bennett, 26, didn't belong. She was only there to deliver a forgotten folder to her grumpy boss, who'd been too busy schmoozing an investor. In a borrowed black dress and scuffed flats, she wove through the crowd, clutching the files like armor. She didn't notice the man by the auction podium, his hand raised with quiet command. Edward Blackwell, 30, CEO of Blackwell Group, held every gaze. Dressed in a sharp white suit, his black hair slicked back, his ice blue eyes bored into the room. He was bidding on an emerald necklace, a peace offering for his mother's endless marital nagging. The price hit 7 figures, and no one dared challenge him, until Claire arrived. 11.2 million, Edward declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs. At that exact moment, Claire, rushing down a narrow aisle, tripped over a gown and crashed into him. His red wine splashed across his pristine white shirt, spreading like a stain on snow. The room froze. A few stifled giggles erupted, then died under Edward's glacial glare. "What are you doing?" he snapped, staring at Claire as if she'd shattered his world. Unfazed, she straightened, chin lifted. "Sorry, but if that shirt matters more than an apology, I pity your taste. And your girlfriend's." Her sarcasm drew louder laughs. Edward stiffened. No one spoke to him like that, especially not in a room of sycophants. Before he could retort, a honeyed voice cut in. "Edward, darling, are you okay?" Olivia Sinclair, a golden-haired socialite, glided over, shooting Claire a venomous look. "Let me call someone. She clearly doesn't belong here." Edward's jaw tightened. Olivia had been clinging to him all night, dripping faux nostalgia and wedding hints. He hated it. Then, impulse struck. He pulled Claire close, arm locking around her waist. "No need. This is my girlfriend. Clumsy, but I like that." The room gasped. Claire's mouth fell open, but Edward whispered, "One night. Pretend. $20,000. His tone was steel, but his eyes pleading. Claire hesitated. She'd mentioned her hospitalized mom earlier. He'd overheard. That money was her lifeline. She nodded stiffly. Olivia paled but forced a smile. "Really, Edward?" "Her?" Ignoring her, Edward guided Claire away. That night, Claire played her role flawlessly, holding his hand, teasing him in public. "He loves control, but I'm not obedient," drawing genuine laughter from Edward. For once, his world felt real. Afterward, in his Bentley, Claire assumed it was over. She'd take the cash and forget him. But as she stepped out, Edward's voice stopped her. "You're something special, Claire Bennett. This won't end here." She laughed. "Thanks for the cash, but don't get ideas. I'm not your type." She didn't see his smirk or the determination in his eyes. The pursuit begins. The next morning, Claire walked into her office, convinced last night was a dream. At 9 a.m., a delivery man arrived with a massive bouquet of white roses. The card read, "Thank you for last night. I'd like to see you again." No pretending. "Edward," she scoffed, tossing it. 10 minutes later, her phone rang. "Miss Bennett, someone's here for you." Edward stood in her shabby lobby, smirking. "I'm here for you," he said. "No acting." Claire rolled her eyes. "Intrigued? Were you drunk, or am I your new toy?" She walked away. He didn't follow. But the next day, a latte appeared on her desk. "Guess you like these. If not, I'll fix it tomorrow." "Edward." She drank it. Waste annoyed her more than his persistence. By the weekend, he, coincidentally, appeared at her favorite diner. "What a surprise," he lied, grinning. "Stalking me?" she snapped. "Just passing by," he said, nodding at her sandwich bag. "What kind do you get?" Claire exhaled. "Blackwell, I don't have time for games." "One chance," he said softly. "That's all I ask." She left, but her pulse betrayed her. Monday, macarons arrived. Tuesday, He bumped into her and her sister at the park, handing Lily ice cream. "He's nice," Lily beamed. Claire frowned, but Edward's gaze was unexpectedly tender. "You take good care of her," he said, no pretense. Claire stayed silent, unsure how to respond. The tipping point came one rainy afternoon. Claire finished work late without an umbrella and stood under the office awning, waiting for the downpour to ease. A tall figure approached, holding a large black umbrella. Edward, his shirt soaked at the shoulders, stepped up to shield her. "I've been waiting over an hour," he said, his voice rough from the cold. Rain dripped from his hair onto his cheek, but he didn't care, just looked at her. Claire froze. "Are you insane? Waiting for what?" "To take you home," Edward answered, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He handed her the umbrella, leaving himself in the rain. "You don't like me, I know, but at least don't let me worry." Claire stared at him, feeling shaken for the first time. This man, rich, powerful, cold, was standing in the rain just to give her an umbrella. She took it, her voice softening. "I don't need you to worry. I can get home myself." Edward smiled, not pushing. "I know you're strong, but I'll keep waiting until you don't find me annoying anymore." He turned away, leaving Claire standing there, gripping the umbrella, her mind a tangled mess. In the days that followed, Claire grew accustomed to Edward's presence, not because she wanted to, but because he was relentless. She felt insecure about her life, an ordinary girl burdened with debt, living in a rundown apartment. How could she compare to him? She feared getting hurt, feared he was only momentarily intrigued. But each time she saw him, standing in the rain, holding ice cream for Lily, or sending small, unflashy gifts, she wondered, what if he's serious? Edward, meanwhile, wasn't in a rush. He knew Claire wouldn't open up easily, but he was willing to wait. For the first time in his 30 years, his heart beat for someone, and he wasn't about to let her slip away. Love blossoms, the first test. After more than a week of Edward's pursuit, flowers, coffee cups, a rain-soaked umbrella, Claire began to feel weary, not from annoyance, but because she didn't know how to handle his persistence. One Friday afternoon, as she left work to pick up Lily from school, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number, but the voice on the other end was unnervingly familiar. "Claire, it's me, Edward," he said, his tone deep yet tinged with a rare hesitation. "I'd like to invite you to dinner, to thank you for that night. Just dinner, nothing more." Claire frowned, gripping the phone tightly. "Thank me for what? I told you that's done." But Edward didn't back down. "You don't owe me, but I owe you a proper meal. 7 p.m., I'll send a car, okay?" His voice was a strange mix of command and plea, leaving Claire unsure how to refuse. She sighed. "Fine, but just this once." At exactly 7, a sleek black Bentley pulled up in front of her rundown apartment complex. Claire stepped out in a simple blue dress, the only decent thing in her closet, and saw Edward leaning against the car, dressed in a rolled-up white shirt and black slacks, looking less distant than usual. He smiled when he saw her, opening the door. "You're more beautiful than I imagined," he said sincerely. Claire shot him a glare. "Don't flatter me. I'm not used to it." The car took them to Edward's villa, a grand white mansion set on sprawling grounds, surrounded by perfectly trimmed gardens. Claire stepped inside, feeling like she'd entered another world. Polished marble floors, dazzling crystal chandeliers, and a faint scent of sandalwood filled the air. "You live here alone?" she asked, unable to hide her surprise. "Most of the time, yes," Edward replied, leading her to the dining room. The table was set, but there were no servants, just the two of them. "I cooked tonight. Hope you don't mind." Claire raised an eyebrow, half believing, half doubting. A CEO like him could cook? But when Edward brought out the first dish, a plate of spaghetti with tomato sauce, she nearly laughed. The pasta was clumped together, the sauce burnt on one side, and the taste indescribable. She took a bite, chewed, then set her fork down. "Be honest, you've never cooked before, have you?" Edward frowned, clearly displeased with her reaction. "I tried. The recipe said it'd be fine." "What recipe teaches you to burn tomato sauce?" Claire stood up, not waiting for an answer, and marched into the kitchen. "I'll do it. Otherwise, we'll both starve tonight." Edward started to protest, but seeing her roll up her sleeves and slip on his apron with ease, he fell silent, sitting nearby to watch. Claire rummaged through the fridge, finding some vegetables, chicken, and a fresh pack of noodles. In just 20 minutes, she whipped up a simple stir-fried noodle dish, fragrant and colorful. She set it in front of Edward, crossing her arms. "Eat. Don't waste my effort." Edward looked at the plate, took a bite, then met her gaze, his eyes gleaming. "This is good. You're better than I thought." He kept eating, unself-conscious, as if it were the best meal he'd ever had. Claire sat across from him, picking up her fork. "Don't be surprised. My life forced me to grow up fast. My mom's sick. My sister needs food. Money's always tight. I learned to cook at 12. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice." Her tone was calm, but Edward caught the hint of bitterness. He stopped eating, looking at her. "You're stronger than most people I know. I'm not good with fancy words, but I admire you." Claire gave a faint smile. "Admiration doesn't help. I don't need your pity." She looked down, eating again, but the air between them grew tense. Edward set his fork down, his voice deeper. "I don't pity you. I just want to understand you." That sparked an argument, not about the food, but their clashing personalities. "You're too arrogant," Claire said, pointing at him. "You think inviting me here will impress me? You live in this mansion. How could you understand my life? And you're too stubborn," Edward shot back, unflinching. "I didn't force you here, but you keep assuming I'm the bad guy. I just want to get closer to you. What's wrong with that?" He stood, stepping toward her, his eyes blazing. "You think I don't have struggles? What do you know about me?" Claire jumped up, facing him head on. "Then tell me. You're a CEO. You have money, power. What's your hardship?" she nearly shouted. But Edward didn't back down. He took a deep breath, then spoke, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "My mom left when I was 10. No explanation, no goodbye. My dad was busy building the company, so I grew up with maids and shareholder meetings. I didn't believe in love, Claire. Not until I met you." He looked straight into her eyes, letting a rare vulnerability show. Claire froze. She hadn't expected a man like Edward to have a past like that. She'd always seen him as someone untouchable, unscathed. But now she glimpsed another side, a boy abandoned, now a man hiding pain behind a cold exterior. She sat back down, silent for a moment. I didn't know," she said softly. "It's fine," Edward replied, sitting closer. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I just want you to understand. I'm not joking when I pursue you." He gave a small smile, trying to lighten the mood. "And I'll learn to cook, so next time you won't have to step in." Claire laughed, genuinely at ease with him for the first time. "If you can cook, I'll believe you can love." They ate on, no more arguing, the distance between them shrinking slightly. In the days that followed, Claire agreed to see Edward a few more times, not because she fully trusted him, but because she was curious. They walked in parks, drank coffee at small cafes, and each time he tried to make her laugh with clumsy remarks or silly mishaps, like spilling coffee on himself. But she still kept her guard up. One evening, as he dropped her off, she stood at her door, looking at him. "Listen, Edward, I'm not the person you think I am. You live in a different world. I'm just an ordinary girl with a mess of problems." Edward stepped closer, his gaze steady. "I don't need you to be anyone else. I just want you to be Claire, the one who spilled wine on my shirt, who cooks noodles 100 times better than me. Is that okay?" Claire didn't answer, but this time, she didn't turn away immediately. She went inside, closed the door, her heart beating faster than usual. Edward stood outside, smiling, knowing he was getting closer to her heart. Love blossoms. The first test. After hesitant meetings and unexpected moments of warmth, Claire began to feel a shift in her heart. Edward was no longer the cold, arrogant CEO she once despised. He was the man who patiently brought her coffee every morning, who clumsily burned tomato sauce in the kitchen, who made her laugh with silly remarks he thought were clever. She still kept an invisible wall between them, afraid that opening her heart would plunge her into an abyss she couldn't escape. A place where she, an ordinary girl burdened with family responsibilities, didn't belong. But a cold, rainy day changed everything. Claire fell ill after a long day working in pouring rain. She dragged herself back to her small apartment, shivering with fever, her mind clouded as if trapped in fog. She called in sick, texted a neighbor to watch Lily, and collapsed onto her bed, slipping into a delirious haze. In the middle of the night, she jolted awake to faint sounds in the room. Opening her eyes, she was stunned to see Edward sitting by her bedside, wiping her forehead with a damp cloth. His deep blue eyes filled with worry. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, a few raindrops still clinging to his hair from his rush to get there. "What are you doing here?" Claire rasped, her voice weak but tinged with suspicion. She tried to sit up, but Edward gently pressed her shoulder, stopping her, his warm hand contrasting with the chill of her fever. "Don't move," he said, his tone low but unusually tender. "Lily called me. She panicked when you collapsed and wouldn't wake up, no matter how much she called. I couldn't leave you here alone." He nodded toward the table, where a steaming bowl of porridge sat. The days after Claire walked away felt like an endless void to Edward. He went through the motions, attending meetings, signing contracts, maintaining his icy CEO facade. But none of it mattered. Without Claire, his world had dimmed. She ignored his calls. When he went to her office, her co-workers just shook their heads. "She's taken a few days off," avoiding him. The realization hit him like a punch. He missed her, not as a passing fascination, but as something vital. He missed her laugh, the way she'd roll her eyes at his terrible jokes. He missed how fiercely she loved Lily, how she'd scold him for burning pasta, but still eat it anyway. He missed her, the stubborn, sharp-tongued woman who'd crashed into his life and spilled wine on his ego. One evening, Edward found himself outside Claire's apartment again, rain dripping down his collar as he stared at her door. His fingers twitched toward the knob, but he stopped. "I don't trust you," she'd said, and he understood. Words wouldn't break through her walls now. The Blackwell office, a father's ultimatum. The next morning, Edward strode into the Blackwell Group's headquarters, his jaw set. His father, Richard Blackwell, waited in the boardroom, a silver-haired titan with a gaze like tempered steel. "Edward," Richard didn't look up from the financial reports. "You've been distracted." "I'm handling everything," Edward replied evenly. "Handling?" Richard's laugh was cold. "You think I haven't heard? The CEO of Blackwell Group chasing some assistant, making a spectacle of himself?" He finally looked up, eyes sharp. "Olivia Sinclair's father called. Their family expects an engagement. You've strung her along long enough." Edward's hands clenched. "Olivia's a liar, and I'm not marrying anyone for business." Richard's voice dropped dangerously. "This company is your legacy, or have you forgotten?" "I haven't," Edward met his father's glare. "But Claire is a distraction." Richard slammed a folder on the table. "Cut ties, or I'll cut her family's hospital funding myself." Edward froze. He knew about Claire's mother, about the bills, about her weakest point. Richard smiled thinly. "Choose, Edward, her or your future." Claire's breaking point. Meanwhile, Claire sat on her apartment floor, Lily curled against her as rain pattered outside. The rumors at work had grown uglier. Gold digger, social climber, whispers she couldn't escape. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Miss Bennett?" A clinical voice. "Your mother's treatment fees are overdue. Without payment, we'll have to discharge her." Claire's breath caught. "But the payments were covered." "The Blackwell Fund just withdrew support." The world tilted. Edward. Had this been his plan all along? Lure her in, then yank the rug out? Trembling, she grabbed her coat. Confrontation, Edward found her at the hospital, standing in the hallway outside her mother's room, her face pale with fury. "You!" she choked out. "You promised! Claire, wait!" He reached for her, but she slapped his hand away. "Was this your game? Make me trust you, then destroy me." Her voice cracked. "I should have known. Rich men don't change." Edward's chest tightened. "My father did this, not me. I swear." "Save it." She backed away, eyes glistening. "I'm done believing in you." For the first time in his life, Edward Blackwell felt true panic. Edward's choice. That night, Edward stormed into his father's study. "Reverse the decision," he demanded. "Now!" Richard didn't look up from his whiskey. "Or what?" Edward set a folder on the desk. "Or I leak these. Every shady deal, every bribe you've buried. The press will rip Blackwell Group apart." Silence, then Richard laughed. "You'd ruin your own company for a girl." "For her?" Edward's voice was deadly quiet. "Yes." Their stares locked, a battle of wills. Finally, Richard sighed. "Fine. But remember, Edward, love is a weakness." Edward turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Number, it's the only thing that's ever made me strong." The hospital, a second chance. The next morning, Claire's mother was approved for extended care. No explanation. Claire sat by her bedside, exhausted, when the door creaked open. Edward stood there, rumpled and sleepless, holding a single white rose. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said hoarsely, "but I need you to know, I chose you over everything." Claire's throat burned. "Why?" He stepped closer, cupping her face with a tenderness that shattered her resolve. "Because you're the first real thing I've ever had." And for the first time, Claire let herself believe him. Epilogue, 1 year later. The tabloid splashed headlines: "Blackwell CEO weds mystery girl in private ceremony." At a small seaside chapel, Edward kissed his bride. A woman in a simple white dress, her laughter brighter than any diamond. Later, as they danced under the stars, Claire whispered, "Still think I'm clumsy?" Edward grinned, spinning her. "Best accident of my life." And somewhere, Olivia Sinclair smashed a champagne glass. The golden light of dusk spilled over Willow Creek, painting Claire's flower shop in warm hues. Inside, she hummed as she arranged a bouquet of lavender and daisies, her fingers deft and sure. The shop, her shop now thriving, smelled of earth and petals, a sanctuary she'd built with her own hands. Her eyes flicked to Edward, who sat at the corner table, scribbling notes for his remote work with Blackwell Group. Ivy, their 9-month-old daughter, dozed in a sling across his chest, her tiny fingers curled into his shirt. He glanced up, catching Claire's gaze, and winked. Still here, always here. The garden behind the shop, Edward's labor of love, was in full bloom. Claire stepped outside, breathing in the scent of roses and lavender. This was the life she'd once thought impossible. A home, a family, love that had weathered every storm. Edward followed, Ivy now cradled in his arms. "What do you think?" he asked, nodding at the flower beds. "Better than your city penthouse?" Claire laughed, swatting his arm. "Infinitely." But then her smile faltered. A shadow of old fears flickered in her eyes. "Edward, do you ever worry?" He knew what she meant. The differences, the past, the world that had tried to tear them apart. Instead of answering, he set Ivy gently in her bassinet and reached into his pocket. A small black velvet box appeared. Claire's breath hitched. Edward knelt in the grass, the sunset gilding his face. "Claire Bennett," he said, voice rough with emotion, "I chased you with a lie that night at the gala, but loving you is the truest thing I've ever done." He opened the box. A simple silver ring glimmered. "Marry me again, every day if you'll let me." Tears spilled down Claire's cheeks. She remembered the man who'd stood in the rain for her, who'd burned pasta and learned to change diapers, who'd fought his own father to keep her family safe. She dropped to her knees in the grass, cupping his face. "Yes," she whispered. "1,000 times, yes." Their kiss was soft, a promise sealed in petals and twilight. 1 year later, the town square of Willow Creek buzzed with laughter and music. Claire, now heavily pregnant with their second child, swayed with Edward under strings of lanterns. Lily, grinning, danced with Ivy in her arms, while Eleanor clapped from her chair, eyes shining. Even Richard Blackwell stood at the edge of the crowd, silver-haired and solemn, but no longer cold. He'd come, hat in hand, to meet his grandchildren, to try. Edward spun Claire gently, his hand resting on her rounded belly. "Happy?" he murmured. Claire leaned into him, her heart full. "More than I ever dreamed." And as the music swirled around them, The little family, bound by love, not blood or status, dance beneath the stars, their story far from over. To our soul stories, family, thank you for journeying with Claire and Edward. If this tale touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe for more stories where love conquers all.